We in here, familia. ¿Cómo está? ¿Cómo están? Travel football fan here, helping fans save money and travel the 2026 World Cup with a special today. It is going to be a shorter live. Just the day has gone from me. Had to go ahead and get the tires replaced. Then realized I need to do some more car repairs. Anyway, we got some big Women's World Cup news to cover here, okay? Yes, I follow women's soccer. Y'all better support the ladies, all right? Folks, big news for 2027 and for 2031, okay? That dropped in the last couple days. I have not done dedicated videos to it, but I'm definitely going to be creating like smaller short form content for it, to help push people to come to and watch this live. But let's break it down exactly what happens. Sorry that these two gentlemen are in front of your screen right here. Again, folks on TikTok, I am live streaming on YouTube. If you want to join me, go ahead there on YouTube. But let's talk about it. It's going to be about a half hour live. I'll give it more time, next week. Again, just had a lot going on today. So, for the Women's World Cup Brazil 2027, the 8 host cities have been announced for 2027. I know I've already been getting messages from people saying, "Hey, I'm really interested in going to the 2027 Women's World Cup. How much money should I be saving? I want to take my daughter. I want to take my family." This is fantastic to hear that people are already thinking beyond 2026 and now are looking towards 2027. Maybe Travel Football Fan continues after 2026. I know I've always said, I'm not so sure, if Travel Football Fan is going to continue after 2026. It's obviously been a very unique experience to say the least regarding this content, and so just I wanted to see if it was gonna be viable or not, to continue beyond next summer. But with the Women's World Cup in Brazil, it's gonna be on our side of the Americas, and a lot of you are interested in going to Brazil. So the 8 host cities that are going to be hosting games in Brazil were all part of the 2014 Men's World Cup. So it's going to be Rio de Janeiro at Maracanã Stadium, Sao Paulo at the Neoquímica Arena, Belo Horizonte at the Minerario Stadium, Brasilia Nacional Stadium, Fortaleza Arena Castelao, Porto Alegre Beira Rio Stadium, Recife Arena Pernambuco, and Salvador at the Arena Fonte Nova. So those are the 8 cities that will be hosting games for the 2027 Women's World Cup, which is fantastic to hear, folks. We do not know right now, of course, where the opening game. Excuse me, right here. Sorry about that. We do not know where the opening game is going to be for the 2027 Women's World Cup, nor will the final will be. Can we take initial guesses that it will be either Rio or Sao Paulo that will host the inaugural and the final? Sure, we could definitely make those guesses. I think in comparison to the other cities, it would make a lot of sense if those two cities hosted one way or another the inaugural or the final match of the Women's World Cup in 2027. So again, the 8 cities are in front of you on your screen: Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, Belo Horizonte, Brasilia, Fortaleza, Porto Alegre, Recife, and Salvador. So those are the 8 cities that will be hosting games for the 2027 Women's World Cup. Let me know in the comments, folks, if you're pretty much excited about this tournament. In terms of life, where would I be at that point? Maybe I go to Brazil. It would be the first time going to Brazil. My wife has not visited Brazil as well. It might be a unique opportunity to go to that country and go see the Women's World Cup over there as well. So that's the first big piece of news that happened today, or at least this week, regarding the Women's World Cup. The second big piece is this one. The Women's World Cup, and this was announced today, an hour ago it seems. The Women's World Cup for 2031 will be expanded to 48 teams. This is massive news. Massive. Because I think it was only been recently that we got it to 32 teams. Okay, I think it was Australia and New Zealand, the 2023 Women's World Cup, that got us to 32 teams. Okay, but now this tournament is going to be expanded to 48 teams, I think that is very, very significant, to say the least, okay? Think about it this way, okay? We are going to go in the span of a decade from having this tournament been from, I believe it was 24 teams to 32 to 48. Now, there's going to be a lot of conversation about sporting integrity, about whether this makes sense for the women's game. Are we inviting too many teams that are not going to do well? There's going to be all of those types of conversations. As a male soccer content creator that has very much supported the women's game even before I started creating content, I think that we need to be very mindful of how we talk about women's soccer, especially us men, how we talk about women's soccer, and how do we critique, how do we, pretty much give feedback to these types of questions, okay? Especially in the context that pretty much, we're saying, oh, but if we add more women's teams, it's gonna make it worse. Not necessarily, right? So let's back up here. So again, in the 2019 Women's World Cup, I believe, had 24 teams. If I'm not mistaken, it might have had 32, but happy to be corrected on the record on that. 2023 had 32 teams. 2027 is going to have 32 teams. And now the 2031 Women's World Cup is going to have 48 teams. Okay? It's going to have 48 teams. Think about it like this. The only bid that has been submitted for the 2031 Women's World Cup has been the United States. I thought at first it was the joint bid again, USA-Mexico. But as far as we are aware, it is only the United States that has submitted the bid. Maybe Mexico joins in afterwards. And I think it would make sense for both countries to, in effect, rehost in 6 years' time, especially given that Liga MX Femenil is very big. I mean, personally, I try to catch up with women's soccer. I do watch some of the Washington Spirit NWSL games. I actually try to go to them in person, at least a couple of them a year. I have not been able to keep up with the Liga MX Femenil. Just not been able to. I see highlights. That's probably the best I've been able to do so far. I think the important thing is this. If you are a women's soccer content creator watching this, okay, please feel free to comment on my live. What are your thoughts about this, about the expansion of the tournament? I know that there's been a lot of recent discussions about injuries. Might hit the similar issues of the schedule congestion because they've also now included a Women's Club World Cup tournament that is going to start happening. I forget whether that's going to be 2028. I think it's when that starts happening. So if that happens every 2 years, how is this going to affect the lead up to 2031? There's a whole bunch of questions that are the same that is happening to the men's game right now that can definitely and will definitely affect the women's game come this tournament of 2031, okay? So there's going to be those same questions about schedule congestion, health and safety of the players, et cetera, et cetera. I think from a geographical standpoint, or rather, what are we looking at for the 2031 bid here? Like I said, the United States is the only country so far that has submitted the bid for 2031. The joint UK bid, which is basically England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, I believe, that UK bid, they're holding off to 2035. So far, we have a bit of a Saudi Arabia situation, oddly enough, in the 2031 women's game here, in the sense that the U.S. is more than likely going to host 2031, unless someone else submits a bid at the last second. And then the UK is expected to submit their bid for 2035, and both of those bids will just be accepted de facto, right? Just because there's no one else competing for those bids for those World Cups. So this is definitely a signal that the USA, at minimum, is definitely going to host the 2031 Women's World Cup. At minimum, that we can confirm from this story right here, because you wouldn't be expanding this tournament to 48 teams if it wasn't going to be hosted in the United States. Okay? So this is obviously FIFA trying to secure their bag and say, "Yep, this is going to be expanded into that 12 group format with the 40 additional matches, increasing this tournament to 104 matches in total." Okay, so this is definitely going to happen. Okay, of course, the Players Union FIFPro welcomes the expansion in principle, but call for a number of issues in the women's game to be addressed. Which, like I said, it goes from injuries, sustainability, financial sustainability of the tournament, which I'm not necessarily too concerned about, but definitely player safety. Those types of topics definitely need to be addressed by FIFA in order for this tournament to make sense. Okay, that's end of the story in that respect. So, what are we looking at then here? Okay, we are looking at the next two World Cups to be in the Americas. I think that is safe to say. The next couple World Cups are going to be here in the Americas. Okay, 2027 has been already confirmed to be in Brazil. We have the 8 host cities there. Okay, so if your plan is to, have travel organized for 2027, of course, start saving your money now. I know that the Club World Cup and the World Cup, both men's tournaments, are in the way, financially speaking, of organizing yourself for that tournament. But there is a way to do this, okay? You're just going to have a really lot of good planning on deck in order to be able to do this, okay? So that's the first part. Okay, that is the first part of this story of the 2027 Women's World Cup is how do you financially set yourself up? There are ways to do it, and you do have 2 years. Basically, you have 2 years to get yourself ready for the 2027 Women's World Cup in that respect. Okay, of course, in terms of flights, at least especially from the United States, you will have options to go fly down there. Again, for those of you that were 2014 veterans of the Brazil Men's World Cup, this will pretty much come as like, oh yeah, I did this before 10 years ago. Of course, there's a lot of things that have changed since. For example, I believe, if I have this correct, Brazil is now demanding visas from, for folks from the U.S. to go into Brazil. I think they've been going back and forth on this one, so you're gonna have to double check the visa requirements for Brazil before you book any flights anytime soon to Brazil. But just double check on those visa requirements. Yeah, I this is going to be a very similar tournament in that respect. I do not think. Let me go back to these. At least for the Manaus was not picked as a host city, so at least I know for a lot of you that went to the 2014 World Cup, I didn't get to go, unfortunately. For sure, for the for this World Cup coming up next in 2027, Manaus was kind of a rough host city to get to in 2014. It looks like they will not be hosting any games. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. No, it doesn't look like they will. So that's going to be good. At least a little bit of a welcome relief for fans in regards to traveling to Manaus for the Women's World Cup in 2027. So at least that is settled there. But definitely the big, I would say not the bigger story, but this is definitely big. The fact that, again, we're expanding to 48 teams for the Women's World Cup in 2031. Very significant. Very significant to say the least. Okay. I welcome all questions and comments. I understand this is a Friday afternoon, so but happy to answer any questions or share your feedback on this news. Again, this is two very big news stories in the Women's World Cup. And yeah, and again, I would say this definitely, if without a shadow of a doubt, will confirm that the U.S. will at minimum host the 2021 World Cup. I say at minimum because, again, I do not know if Mexico is going to join in and want to host alongside the United States, or this is going to be a U.S.-only tournament for the Women's World Cup. But again, I think it makes a lot of sense if the U.S. and Mexico join forces to host the Women's World Cup. Who knows if there's going to be some political desire to host together. I know that right now, the political situation is not great between the two countries, or at least it's a very curt diplomatic relationship between these two nations. And so to be able to then come to the desk and say, all right, we're going to work together on 2031, it might be that President Sheinbaum doesn't want to work with Trump to get 2031 Women's World Cup in. Kind of let the U.S. take the lead on it. Wait out 2028, and then at that point, Mexico could join in. Granted, the U.S. could rather easily host this World Cup. 48 teams, they could do it. They could do it, no problem. Um, but I would think that for the purposes of hopefully reapproachment, of kind of bringing the relationship back in terms of a reset, I think it would be beneficial for both the U.S. and Mexico to collaborate to host 2031. Liga MX Femenil will benefit from it. The NWSL will benefit from it. But again, you're just gonna have to wait and see how the political environment is after the 2028 U.S. presidential elections, because I'm sure Scheinbaum is not gonna want to give Trump a win. I mean, and that's just kind of that is the geopolitical situation right now with these two countries as it relates to the 2031, Women's World Cup. I welcome your comments and questions related to the Women's World Cup, and then I'll open it up to other general questions in a couple of minutes. But again, big news: the 8 host cities for Brazil for the Brazil Women's World Cup 2027 have been announced, and then today the Women's World Cup has been announced that it will expand to 48 teams in 2031, which pretty much all but guarantees that the U.S. will be hosting the 2031 Women's World Cup, which is fantastic news. Okay. Very big supporter here of the women's game here myself. But is that also going to result in, in Mexico joining the U.S. bid later on? Is it going to join it now? We just simply don't have that information in hand at this time. Okay, happy to answer any other World Cup related questions, both for the men's and women's side. I know I've already had some folks ask me about travel to 2027. So do not think for a second that this content is not relevant at all. If anything, this is going to be, if I continue this content for travel football fan beyond the men's World Cup in 2026, it is going to then switch to 2027 Brazil Women's World Cup, 2030 Men's World Cup, 2031 Women's World Cup. It's just a natural progression there. Again, if this makes sense for me, because this takes a lot of work, folks. This does, it'll be very hard for me to see myself, be on this chair, kind of like as a radio host of sorts, providing all this coverage for all these tournaments coming up. But maybe it does. Maybe it pays off at the end of the day in some way, shape, or form. If any brand wants to put their sponsored billboard here, that'd be fantastic. I know TikTok, you can't really see it, but on the YouTube live stream, I got a little blank piece right here. So if you want to drop your digital ad board right here, happy to do so. In that respect. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens to Travel Football Fan, okay? But really, this could be the continuation of Travel Football Fan, the women's game, and expanding to those national tournaments of the women's game in 2027 and 2031. Okay, let's answer all other questions, men's or women's World Cup related. Happy to answer them. So here we go. Question: buying FIFA Club tickets for summer games says guaranteed opportunity to buy World Cup. No, it's not guaranteed. The right to buys are just the right to buy for you to buy that ticket for the World Cup, but that's about it. It doesn't guarantee you anything. When is the Women's World Cup? Summer of 2027. They haven't really said when exactly. They haven't released the dates of the 2027 Women's World Cup, I believe. I don't think they've released the dates, right? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think they've released dates for the Women's World Cup in 2027, but they did release the okay, yeah. They've released the host cities, and yeah, here we go. So they want to host. It looks like they might want to host the opening match in Sao Paulo, and then the final at the Maracanã, which makes total sense. I mean, that would make all the total sense. When am I going to Monterrey next month? First, it's the second week of June, I believe it is. So that's that. Any plans to scout Mexico City, Guadalajara? If they invite me, happy to go scout out those cities and share their World Cup plans for all of you fans. Absolutely. It all depends if they not necessarily fly me out, but they got to cover some aspects of the travel costs. So yeah, I would go to the upcoming World Cup men's, but the prices are outrageous. And that's the thing, folks. The Women's World Cup is super affordable ticket-wise compared to the men's. Now, I don't know if that's going to continue to be the case in 2031 for the Women's World Cup, but at least ticket prices in the last Women's World Cup in 2023 in Australia and New Zealand were super affordable. So yeah, it would be great if that continues moving forward. It'd be great if FIFA realizes that after 2026, it's not cool to, fleece the fans. Prices come back down, and it'll be a win-win for everybody. What city interests you the most for 2026 or 2027? Yeah, I have a question. I'm going to the Club World Cup game at Hard Rock Stadium. How does one get off from the Tribal Stadium if you can't walk because it's too far? You're gonna have to get either an Uber or some other form of public transit because yeah, Tri-Rail is nowhere near Hard Rock Stadium. You're gonna have to get an Uber at that point, unless they're offering some sort of shuttle service. That's how you're gonna have to do it. What city interests me the most for 2026? Apart from Mexico City, I mean Monterrey. I gotta give a shout out to Monterrey. Just in case you folks missed it, I am now officially collaborating with the Monterrey local organizing committee to pretty much provide exclusive content regarding their World Cup preparations for 2026. So, yeah, I am pretty much officially collaborating with the city of Monterrey, with the Monterrey local organizing committee. So, I got to give shouts out to the first city that reached out to me, the first city that said we want to work with you, travel football fan, and that is Monterrey. So yeah, thank you. No, thank you for that. Absolutely. So yeah, that'll be the first city that'll be of interest. For the Women's World Cup in 2027, if I do get to go, never been to Brazil. So I would love to see, I love to see pretty much anywhere I get to go Brazil, would love to see it. Rio, Sao Paulo, Brazil. I would love to see any and all parts of Brazil that I would get to visit if I'm able to go ahead and make it to the Women's World Cup in 2027. Will I be following Colombia the whole time? Hopefully, we'll see. We'll see. It depends on where they're playing to begin with. Depends on how much money I have saved and everything. So yeah. Hopefully they'll organize it better than Copa America. Yeah, hopefully. I got 10K saved. Do you think that'll be enough to go to all the Mexico games? Christian, again, depending on your travel costs, which games, because remember, there's big gaps in the calendar. So your costs might be eaten up by hotel stays unless you got family. It really does depend. So it might be enough, it might not be enough. It's a tough question to answer without knowing all those other details. I don't have plans to catch a game in Monterrey, but I might depending on your content. Hey, and that's what Monterrey wants to hear, folks. Monterrey wants to go ahead and encourage those fans that maybe didn't have an interest in going to Monterrey. Granted, Monterrey understands that in order to attract the fans coming, they only have 4 games, right? They're only hosting 4 World Cup matches, which I think is a shame. 3 group stage games and then 1 round of 32, I believe it is. Was it round of 32? I believe it's a round of 32. It might be around of 16. I don't know. I think that might be a round of 32 match. So they understand they're only hosting 4 games. They want you to come for the rest of the party, okay? I think for a lot of us in the United States, we're keen about wanting to have the vibes for the World Cup next summer. So that's why they want folks to be able to come and have a good time. Anything on New York yet? I did ask New York when I was at that meeting at Elizabeth, New Jersey, that, hey, what are your plans in terms of like helping fans accommodate for hotel prices? They really weren't too keen to answer necessarily in the positive, or rather they said, well, that's not our area of responsibility. So if anything, it's up to you folks to push your local government officials to push the hotels, the hotel groups to make sure that the prices are not being gouged. I have a feeling we're going to be spending a house down payment for the World Cup. That might happen, folks. Be ready for it. Be absolutely ready for that. Okay? All right. Let's keep it short here for today. Okay? How much do I think it's going to be for the Mexico second game? I have no idea, folks. It's going to be a little bit cheaper than the inaugural just because the inaugural is more expensive. But I wouldn't have a clue about the second game in Guadalajara. Jeez, my voice is going out. Is there going to be tariffs on World Cup tickets? Maybe. Maybe. I mean, apparently we're putting tariffs on movies, so who knows? Will Canada be expensive? Yes, especially Vancouver. Vancouver, unfortunately, has a shortage of hotel rooms. They might be bringing in a cruise ship or 2 in order to alleviate the shortfall on the hotel rooms that they do have. So, yes, Vancouver especially will be expensive. Yes, I am going to Colombia next month to go see Colombia, Peru, as part of a special collaboration with Absolute Sport. So I will be doing that. And then afterwards, I might go into the Club World Cup. I mean, we got some games here in DC, so I might be able to catch 1 or 2 maybe. see what the noise is about. But I'm not looking to spend hundreds of dollars on the Club World Cup. So we'll see what happens. If any other content creator ideas come up that folks want to either sponsor or do anything like that, then fine, I'll do it. But we shall see what happens with that. So yeah, we'll see. All right, folks, let me go ahead and wrap this up today. This was a short live. I really apologize. But I gotta go do some other things. It's just been a really busy day today on Friday. But yes, thank you all so much. Again, big news on the Women's World Cup. This will be the continuation after 2026, if indeed I decide to continue Travel Football Fan past 2026. It is then providing coverage on 2027 Women's World Cup, coverage for the 2031 Women's World Cup, because it's gonna be here in the USA. I mean, you're expanding this tournament to 48 teams. You best believe the 2031 Women's World Cup is going to be accepted by the United States, and it's going to be the big push to have all those games here in the United States. So that's going to happen. Facts. Okay, last question. When do you think we're going to start seeing more people getting hyped for the World Cup? We're so close. Good question, man. Every time the hype meter goes a little bit high, at least for the U.S., it always comes crashing down because of you-know-who. So I think the hype, we need to start building the hype for Mexico, and we need to start building the hype for Canada, and then on select cities here in the U.S. I think that's just kind of the way that this tournament is panning out to be. And again, you folks tell me which cities you're more hyped about compared to others too. So, y'all are hyped about my collaboration with Monterrey. Y'all super hyped about that. So, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that Monterrey gets his flowers, and, we go from there. And if Mexico City and Guadalajara want to go ahead and collaborate with me, let's go, vamos, Atlanta's going to cook. Soccer here is hot. Yo, actually, Atlanta might be on my list, too, for the next cities that are asking for collaboration with me. So, I would love to support Atlanta, for sure. I would love to support Atlanta. Haven't visited in a while, but I've always had a good time. Hopefully NYC can collab. I mean, I was actually born in Queens, New York. I grew up in Miami my whole life, but I was born in Queens. So, New York, if you're watching this, I mean, they already met me too. So, hey, nice to meet you again. All right, folks, I do got to go. Thank you so much for your time here. Quick live. I will be giving this more attention. For those of you that support the women's game, I will be giving it more attention. I promise. I want to give this more coverage. But in the meantime, this was the two big news coming in for the Women's World Cup. The 8 host cities for 2027 were announced, and the Women's World Cup 2031 is going to expand to 48 teams. I think that's something to be excited about. Let's just hope that we keep the